Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Crown and today we are going to have some more stories that I hope that you will enjoy. But before we start, it will be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to the channel, like the video if you enjoyed it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now, without further ado, let's go! First story. I was bored at work, so got a guy fired and possibly sent to prison for fraud. I worked a night shift as a receptionist at a hotel in Norway, and most nights are spent watching Netflix/playing games. Last summer was really slow and I also worked a lot extra, so I ran out of stuff to watch and games to play. One night I got an email from Scooter. He wanted to book a room for almost 20 days. I just had to send them the price and confirmation that we had rooms available, and he would then send me his credit card information for me to pre-charge. Normally, we just delete these kinds of mail. But I was bored out of my mind, so I responded with an offer for around $2,000 for the entire stay. Also made sure to inform him that he could cancel for free up until the day of arrival. This is probably the most common fraud attempt in the hotel/travel industry. Unlike most businesses, we are able to charge credit/debit cards with only the card number and expiration date. No need for a PIN code, CVC, or other authentication methods. Our software also allowed us to deposit money directly to local and international bank accounts by using the card number. And because of this, jerks like Scooter will try to prepay with stolen/skimmed cards, but then cancel the booking and ask us to refund the amount to a different card. A couple of hours after sending him the offer, he responded with a Visa number and told me to charge him as soon as possible. I checked the card with our validation software, and to my big surprise, it did not belong to Scooter. If validation succeeds, it will return with the card owner's name 90% of the time. I sent him a new mail stating that the card was declined because of the insufficient funds. He quickly replied and gave me a new card to try. Guess what? This one did not belong to Scooter either. Wasn't even the same person as the first card. By checking the PIN codes, 6 first digits, I found which banks had issued the cards. Not even issued in the same country. My plan was to just call the banks and inform them of the attempted scam, but there were still several hours before I could go home, so I decided to screw with Scooter a bit more. I sent him a reply that the second card went through, and also the reference number for his stay at our hotel. As expected, a couple of hours later, Scooter sent an email canceling the order and asked if we could refund the money to a different card, as he had lost his wallet and deactivated the card he paid with. This card was issued from a Polish bank. Not sure why, but Polish bank accounts are often used by people who want to launder money from bitcoins and drugs. You can buy a legit card for around $500 that is registered to some guy or girl in Poland from Darknet. At this point, Scooter was probably pretty happy about the $2,000 he soon would receive. I replied that it was no problem for me to transfer the money to a different card, as long as it was valid. How fun would it be to also cancel his own card, so that he had to spend $500 for a new one? Not fun enough. In the last mail I wrote that he could send me the card number, but that our email server would go down for maintenance in a few minutes, so my boss would do it on Monday. It was now Saturday morning, so there was enough time for the charged bank to call us and reverse the transfer. If he needed the money right away, I told him to call the hotel before I ended my shift at 7. He called almost immediately, and I wrote down the card number and his phone number. Told him I transferred the money, and that it would be in his account by 12. My shift ended and I went home with all the information Scooter has provided. Wanted to see if I could find out who he was, and of course, this idiot had an open Facebook profile that I found using the phone number. He even listed his address and employer. Looked a bit like the artist Scooter, but with even more screwed up face and spiky hair full of gel. He lived somewhere outside of London, in an area I would describe as a British trailer park. Houses that were nice at some point, but where the owners had spent £0 on maintenance since it was built. Trash everywhere and broken windows that were boarded up or fixed by sealing holes with garbage. Now to the fun part. According to his Facebook profile, Scooter worked at a hotel. This meant that he would have access to card information from guests that booked through sites like Booking.com. I called the manager of the hotel and told him there was a reason to believe that one of his employees was trying to commit credit card fraud, and that the card numbers could belong to their guests. Gave him the name of the people who owned the cards Scooter tried to pay with, and to no surprise, both had stayed at the hotel. Told him it was Scooter, and the manager just exploded in anger. Not 100% sure what he said because he was screaming so loud, but I think Scooter wasn't a normal employee. He worked there through some kind of government training program or something like that. After talking to the manager, I called both Visa and MasterCard International and told them about the Scooter's little business venture. Apparently, it is pretty easy to check if there are more cards that have been involved in fraud, or the cards also have been used at Hotel Scooter. With his polished deposit account information, they would also be able to pin it on Scooter if he had been successful in scamming anyone, and sue him for the amount stolen. The police also called me later to get a statement regarding the whole situation, so I know that the manager reported it to the police. Not exactly sure what happened to the guy, but according to his Facebook profile, he no longer works at the hotel, or anywhere else as far as I can see. Next story. Of water porn parasites and the little creeps next door. A comeuppance. When I was in high school, my family lived quite a way out of town on a small chunk of mostly useless property. There is not much in the Texas panhandle. That did have a very nice little garden and a barn/junk shed and a small pond stocked with fish. The barn and pond were there when we moved in. The garden and fish were our own additions and product of lots of hard work. Our very first interaction with the neighbors was the entitled parents coming over to inform mine that the previous owners had let their little creeps run loose all over the property and play in the barn and swim and fish in the pond. That last one is very obviously false, as there weren't any fish before we put them there. But this isn't about the entitled parents. We really had very little interaction with them. The little creeps were a boy and a girl, I would estimate 8 and 10. In retrospect, those two had issues that definitely weren't helped by their parents' parenting style. Our first introduction to the first little creep was getting up one morning, pulling on shoes, and trudging out to leave for school, and finding him standing on the end of the short dock being into the pond. None of us could really think of anything to say to that. It only got worse from there. The real problems began with the dead rabbits. If we got up early right around sunrise, we would often see rabbits moving around. There was a warren under one corner of the barn, and it was a constant battle keeping them out of the garden. But we managed. I was sad but not super shocked to find a couple of rabbits dead in the driveway when I came home one afternoon. There were also coyotes out there, and various snakes and raccoons. But then it was another and none of them were eaten. It was getting worrisome and creepy. So I finally pulled on some rubber gloves and performed a post-mortem on the next one that turned up. The wounds weren't bites, they were BPs. It took another week to confirm what we guessed. My dad enlisted a friend to help us get all the cars out of the driveway and out of sight while he stayed behind to watch. And sure enough, the little creeps showed up with their PP guns, entirely unsupervised, to kill small animals and leave them lying in our yard. My dad is 6.5 feet tall and was a quarterback in high school, and he was hoping that his disappointed face would put a stop to this. It didn't. He went striding out to give them a talking to, and they took off running home. He went after them, but no one would open the door to talk to him. He went over again after he saw their parents come home, and the parents did not answer the door either. He left a note saying that children were not welcome to hunt on the property and requesting money to replace the windows they chipped. Then made a call to the local police to, let them know these kids were running around trespassing with firearms. Very big yikes. We caught the first little creep peeing on our lettuces a couple days later. The rabbit slaughter continued, but we weren't able to catch them again. The police actually did pick them up shortly after that for trespassing on a nearby construction site and causing tens of thousands of dollars of damage to the materials and large equipment. We chased them out of the garden a few times, showed them off the dock and spent several hours fishing the trash they had been throwing out to the pond, and putting out some fires they started. We tacked up no trespassing signs, informed the police about the subsequent weirdness, and put additional locks on the barn, because someone definitely, absolutely, not the little creeps, sawed the locks off and stole things. But then, it was a nice early summer day, and my dad and sister took a dip in the pond. They came screaming out of it within half an hour, red and swelling, and we zoomed them off to the ER, where a skin scrape revealed a severe parasitic skin infection. I don't remember the name of the microorganism. It was something propagated in the bodies of water snails, which can spread out of the skin and through other tissues and potentially eat your brain. Easily treatable in the US though. They were put on medication to kill the bugs and spent the next couple of weeks bathing in calamine and oatmeal. We happened to be out in the yard as the entitled neighbor family was piling into their car. One of the few times we had ever seen them all in one place at one time and within shouting distance. To this day, I don't know if it was true neighborly concern, liability self-covering, or a carefully engineered teaching moment. My mother, bless her, called out, Hey, y'all need to stay out of that pond, okay? And they pretended not to hear her, slammed their doors and drove away. The very next day we heard screams coming from the direction of the pond. Yep, we used the microorganisms there to give them a taste of their own medicine. Ha, how about that? Next story. Got a man in jail for selling drugs to my wife. This is not my story, but posted by someone else with proof, sharing it as it fits into this sub. A man drug dealer encouraged my wife to do meth, got her hooked and then treated her as a slave. Not saying that she wasn't responsible as well, but she shared a good part of the blame. When she first started on the drugs, I tracked down her dealer and confronted him. I went to his job and asked him to come outside. And I very calmly told him that I knew about his side job and what was happening with my wife. I said that if he agreed to never contact her or answer if she called, that I would just go away. He agreed, we shook hands and I left. But he didn't keep up his part of the bargain. 2 months later, I am unemployed. My wife is in rehab and he's still out partying, selling drugs every day. I made a call to the corporate office of the place where he worked. I told him he was selling drugs out of the store, and 2 days later he was fired. I followed him for a month, observing and taking notes. I called a friend of mine who works for the state police, and I told him what I have been doing. He advised against it, but said that I wasn't breaking any laws. So I gave him a detailed schedule of where and when the guy picked up his drugs, the route and stops he made when he left, and specifically when he drove down a street passing an elementary school. Then I told him that the guy's tags were expired. A few days later he was pulled over in a school zone and arrested. He was sentenced to a total of 12 years. I wrote him a letter explaining why he was in prison. I told him why he lost his job, was arrested, and had his freedom taken away for such a large portion of his life. She got clean and I tried to forgive her for 3 years and I wasn't successful. So we got a divorce. I still hurt and it wasn't immediately satisfying, but now I look back on it with absolutely no regret, and I'm very glad that I did it. Update. I've seen several questions about why I sent a letter. For exactly the same reason I chose to get revenge on him in the first place. To hurt him in order to make myself feel better. That doesn't work for some people, but it did for me in this situation. I am certainly not a hero. I don't even consider myself a good guy. I didn't do it so that he wouldn't get other people hooked or sell mess to kids or anything like that. No ulterior motives. Just revenge. Pure and simple. He was hurting someone I loved. My family. I warned him, but he still kept it up. I did not sneak around skulking in the shadows when I followed him. He saw me plenty of times, and he knew that I was watching him. It did not occur to me to be frightened of what he might do. I was more concerned then and now that the police might think that I am hunting him. The guy was a bully, and although I think the term narcissist is overused, I believe he definitely qualifies. He'd done the same thing to a few other women/wives, and several were young girls, teenagers. He thought he could get away with it because he had in the past. In my experience, bullies back down when someone pushes back hard enough. This case proved to be no different. He was released from prison 4 years ago, and I saw him around town a few times and attempted to approach and talk to him twice. Both times he turned and quickly left the store. He moved to a different city about 75 miles away and got married to a much older woman. Nothing wrong with any of that, just facts. I don't hold grudges against him, and I don't care if he does towards me. I feel that he got off pretty easy. I'm not some powerful guy, but if he decides that things aren't square, then I guess he'll come see me about it. I was never particularly concerned about his possible retribution, but I did take precautions. And no, it doesn't keep me up at night.
And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.